The screams of the dying echoed through the metal corridors of Theta 7, station as Princess Queen Zathari walked through the blood and broken bodies of her enemies without a single scratch on her silver armor. She was tall by any species standard, standing nearly 8 feet with scales that shimmered like dark emeralds under the emergency lighting, and her 4 eyes scanned the destruction around her with cold satisfaction. This was her 43rd conquest in 2 standard galactic cycles, and it had been just as easy as all the others before it. The elite guard, the Volcaran Death Chosen, moved ahead of her through the smoke and fire, their weapons still hot from battle, and she felt pride watching them work with such deadly efficiency. The Galactic Coalition thought they could defend this station against the might of Velkar Prime, but they were fools who had never faced true warriors from a world that killed the weak before they could walk. Zathari remembered her homeworld. With something close to love in her twin hearts, Velkar Prime was a nightmare to every other species in the known galaxy. A Class 9 death world where acid rain fell for months at a time and mega predators hunted anything that moved, and the very plants could dissolve flesh from bone. Her people had evolved in that hell and emerged as the most dangerous warriors the galaxy had ever seen. Or so she had always believed. My queen. Her commander Krixall spoke through his helmet communicator. The station command center is secure, and the enemy leadership is requesting terms of surrender. Zathari smiled with teeth that could bite through starship hull plating and said, "Tell them their terms are simple. Serve the Empire, or die screaming like the rest." She continued walking toward the command center, stepping over the bodies of Coalition soldiers who had tried so hard to stop her invasion force, and she felt nothing but contempt for these soft creatures from their gentle garden worlds. They had never known true struggle, never fought for every breath of air, never learned that the universe was a cruel and violent place that only respected strength. The command center doors opened before her, and she saw the station administrators trembling behind their consoles, with terror in their many different eyes. There were representatives from at least 6 different species in this room, all of them pathetically weak compared to even the youngest Velcaran child, and Zathari took her place in the commander's chair like a queen claiming her rightful throne. "This station now belongs to the Velcaran Empire," she announced in a voice that carried across the room like thunder. "And you will all serve or you will all die. Those are the only options I offer." One of the administrators, a small furry creature with 8 legs, found enough courage to speak and asked, "What happened to your rearguard, Princess Queen?" Zathari's 4 eyes narrowed with sudden suspicion because she had not received any reports of trouble from her forces. Securing the lower levels, she activated her communication device and called for her rear guard commander, but received only static in response. "Krixall," she ordered sharply, "take a squad and find out what is happening in the cargo sections below us." Her commander bowed his massive head and departed with 12 of her best warriors, leaving Zathari to wonder what could possibly threaten soldiers. From a Class 9 death world, she did not have to wait long for an answer. Sounds of weapons fire erupted from somewhere deep in the station, followed by the distinctive screams of Velcaran warriors in pain, sound she had rarely heard in all her years of conquest. Then silence fell over the communication channels like a cold blanket of death. "Krixall," she called out, "report your status." Immediately, his voice came back broken and filled with something she had never heard from him before. Something that sounded almost like fear. "My queen, there is something down here. Something that fights like nothing we have ever faced before. We cannot stop it, and it has already killed 8 of my warriors with its bare hands alone." Zathari felt her twin hearts beat faster with an emotion she barely recognized because it had been so long since she had felt anything like excitement at the prospect of a real challenge. "Hold your position," she commanded. "I am coming down personally to deal with this threat myself." She rose from the commander's chair and drew her ceremonial blade, a weapon forged in the volcanic fires of Velkar Prime, that had tasted the blood of 1,000 enemies. Across a dozen worlds, the journey to the cargo section took only minutes, but felt like hours as she followed the trail of her dead warriors through corridors that now held Velcaran bodies instead of Coalition soldiers. Whatever had done this was skilled beyond anything she had encountered before, and she felt her predator instincts. Awakening from a long slumber, she found Crixel bleeding against a cargo container with wounds that would have killed any other species instantly. But Velcaran regeneration was already working to save his life. "Where is it?" she demanded, her eyes scanning every shadow for movement. Crixel pointed with a trembling claw toward the darkness between the storage units and whispered, "It moves like smoke and hits like a meteor strike. My queen, I have never seen anything like it in all my years of service." Zathari stepped forward into the darkness with her blade ready and called out, "I am Princess Queen Zathari of the Velcaran Empire, and I have conquered 7 star systems with my own hands. Show yourself and face me, if you dare." A figure emerged from the shadows, and she saw for the first time what had slaughtered her elite. Warriors like they were nothing more than training dummies. It was shorter than her by more than 2 feet and wore primitive-looking armor that seemed designed for a much smaller and weaker creature. But the being moved with a grace that spoke of deadly purpose. The figure removed its helmet, and she saw a face that looked almost fragile with soft skin and only 2 small eyes. But those eyes held something she recognized immediately. The cold, calculating gaze of a true apex predator. "Not bad," the creature said in a voice that was calm, despite being surrounded by Velcaran warriors. "Your soldiers were better than I expected, but still not good enough." Then the creature was gone, vanishing into an air vent before she could even swing her blade. Leaving her standing alone with questions burning in her mind like fire, she found a small metal object on the ground where the creature had stood. An insignia of some kind that showed concentric circles with strange shapes that might have been land masses on them. Her computer advisor scanned the symbol and then went silent for a long moment before displaying a single word that made even the Princess Queen feel something cold in her hearts. The word was Terran, and beside it flashed a warning that read, "Species classification restricted by order of the Galactic." Icons of Zathari looked at the insignia in her clawed hand and felt something she had not felt since she was a child fighting for survival. On Valkar Prime, she felt the thrill of finding worthy prey, and she knew that she would not rest until she had hunted down this creature and learned all of its secrets. The conquest of Theta 7 Station suddenly seemed very unimportant compared to this new mystery, and the Princess Queen smiled her terrible smile as she began planning her next hunt for the first time in many years. She had found something that interested her more than simple conquest, and she would not stop until she had her answers. 3 standard cycles had passed since Zathari encountered the mysterious being on Theta 7 Station, and she had spent every moment since then hunting for information about the species called Terran. Her advisors had searched through every database in the Velcaran Empire and contacted every intelligence source they could find. But the answers they brought back only made her more curious and more determined to find this creature. "My queen," a chief intelligence officer Vrathanal said with obvious nervousness in his voice, "we have finally obtained the classified files from the Coalition archives. But I must warn you that what they contain is most disturbing." Zathari sat forward on her throne in the royal chamber of her flagship and commanded, "Show me everything you have found about these Terrans and their homeworld." The holographic display activated and showed an image of a small blue and green planet orbiting an average yellow star in a distant arm of the galaxy that most species considered worthless and empty. "This is the planet called Earth," Vrathanal explained, "located in what the Coalition designates as Sector 0, which has been under complete quarantine for 50 standard galactic cycles. Zathari studied the image with all four of her eyes and asked, "Why would the Coalition quarantine an entire sector of space for such a small and ordinary-looking world?" Her intelligence officer hesitated before answering, and she could see fear building in his expression as he prepared to speak. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, my queen, which makes it one of only 3 such planets ever discovered in the entire history of galactic exploration." The words hit Zathari like a physical blow because she had always believed that Valkar Prime at Class 9 was among the most dangerous worlds in existence. But this Earth was rated 3 levels higher on the scale. "That cannot be correct," she said with doubt in her voice. "There is no way a sapient species could evolve on a world more deadly than our own without being destroyed." Rathanel displayed a list of Earth's characteristics on the screen and each item made. Her twin hearts beat faster with a mixture of disbelief and growing respect. The planet's surface is 70% covered with a corrosive compound called salt water that is poisonous to most galactic species if consumed in large quantities, he read from the data. And the atmosphere contains 21% oxygen, which is considered dangerously high by Coalition safety standards. He continued reading as Asari listened in stunned silence. Earth experiences extreme temperature variations ranging from -90 degrees to +50 degrees depending on location and season. And the planet hosts millions of parasitic organisms, deadly bacteria, and viral agents that can kill most species within hours of exposure. The list went on to describe predators that hunted in organized packs, insects that could strip flesh from bone in minutes, plants that produced lethal toxins, and natural disasters including earthquakes, massive storms, volcanic eruptions, and something called tsunamis that could destroy entire coastal regions. And the Terrans, Rathanel said with his voice dropping to almost a whisper. They evolved as persistence hunters who would chase their prey for days without rest until the creatures simply collapsed from exhaustion and terror. Zathari stood from her throne and walked to the display with new understanding forming in her mind about the creature that had defeated her elite warriors so easily. "They are like us," she said quietly. "They are survivors of a world that tried to kill them every single day." Her intelligence officer nodded and added, "The Coalition discovered Earth 50 cycles ago and made first contact with the Terrans. But within one cycle, they had established the quarantine and classified all information about the species." "Why would they hide this information?" Zathari demanded to know. "What are they so afraid of?" Rathanel brought up another file that showed images of Terran history, and the Princess Queen felt something close to horror as she watched what these creatures had done to each other over their long and violent past wars that killed millions of their own kind. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. Diseases they had created to use against each other. And destruction of their own environment on a scale that had nearly wiped out their species. The Coalition realized that Terrans were too dangerous to allow into galactic society, Rathanel explained, because a species this aggressive and this resilient could potentially conquer the entire galaxy if they ever united under a single purpose. Zathari understood now why the creature on Theta 7 had fought with such skill and determination, because it came from a world that made her own homeworld look almost peaceful by comparison. "The Terran I encountered," she said. "Where did it come from if the planet is under quarantine?" Her officer displayed a new file and answered, "Before the quarantine was established. Some Terrans had already left their world and scattered across the galaxy as traders, mercenaries, and explorers. And the Coalition calls these individuals Star Wanderers." The file showed tracking data that followed the movements of known Star Wanderers across Coalition space. And one particular path caught her attention immediately. "This one," she pointed at a red line on the map. This one passed through Theta 7 station at the exact time I was there. Brathnell confirmed her suspicion and said, "The Terran is named Marcus Chun, according to our intelligence. And he was last tracked heading toward Meridian Station, which is a neutral trading hub where all species can conduct business." Zathari felt the thrill of the hunt returning to her blood as she studied the path this Marcus Chun had taken across the stars. Always staying one step ahead of any authority that might try to capture him. "Prepare my personal vessel," she commanded. "I am going to Meridian Station to find this Terran and learn for myself what makes his species so dangerous that the entire coalition fears them." Her advisors tried to warn her against going alone into neutral territory where her enemies might try to assassinate her. But she silenced them with a single look from her cold predator eyes. "I have conquered 7 star systems," she reminded them, "and I have never met a creature that could match my strength and skill until now. So I must know if this Terran is truly my equal or if the fight on Theta 7 was merely luck." The journey to Meridian Station took 5 standard cycles, and Zathari spent the time studying everything she could find about Terran biology, culture, and combat techniques. She learned that they could survive injuries that would kill most species instantly, that they could adapt to almost any environment, and that they formed powerful emotional bonds with other creatures that made them fight harder to protect those they considered family. When her ship arrived at Meridian Station, she left her guards behind and walked into the massive trading hub wearing civilian clothes that hid her identity but could not hide her imposing Velcaran physiology. The station was filled with thousands of beings from hundreds of different species, all conducting business and trading goods from across the galaxy. And she searched through the crowds for any sign of her quarry. Spotted him in a crowded food court, sitting alone at a table and eating something that looked like charred meat with his bare hands, while other species gave him a wide area of empty space around his table. He looked so ordinary sitting there, so small and fragile compared to the massive aliens around him. But Zathari could see the truth in the way he moved and the way his eyes constantly scanned for threats. He was a predator wearing the disguise of prey, and she respected that kind of deception because it was exactly what a true hunter would do. She walked toward his table with her heart pounding and her muscles ready for combat. And when he looked up and saw her approaching, she saw recognition flash in his strange small eyes. "Princess Queen Zathari," he said calmly as if greeting an old friend. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find me." She sat down across from him and replied, "You killed 12 of my best warriors without breaking a sweat. So I had to come see what kind of creature could do such a thing." Marcus Chen smiled with teeth that were small and flat, but somehow still looked dangerous. And he said, "I was just defending myself against invaders, which is something my people have been doing for thousands of years." Zathari leaned forward and made her challenge clear. "I want to fight you. Terran, I want to know if you are truly my equal or if that battle on Theta 7 was just a trick." His smile grew wider and he answered, "I thought you would never ask." The combat arena at Meridian Station was the largest and most famous fighting venue in the entire neutral zone, and news of the upcoming duel between Princess Queen Zathari and the Terran called Marcus Chun had spread across the station like wildfire. Thousands of spectators from dozens of different species packed the viewing platforms that surrounded the massive circular arena, all of them eager to witness what promised to be the most spectacular fight in the station's long historic. Zathari stood at her entrance gate, wearing her ceremonial armor and carrying her volcanic blade, and she could feel the excitement of the crowd vibrating through the metal floor beneath her feet across the arena. She could see Marcus waiting at his own gate with that calm expression on his soft face that she had come to recognize as the mask of a predator, preparing to strike the arena master, a tall insectoid being with clicking mandibles, announced to the crowd through the speaker system. Welcome to the most anticipated battle in Meridian Station history, featuring Princess Queen Zasari of the Velcaran Empire against a Terran Star Wanderer known as Marcus Chun. The crowd roared with excitement and thousands of credits changed hands as gamblers placed their final bets, with most of the money going towards Zasari because very few believed that the small Terran could defeat a warrior from a Class 9 Deathworld. Before we begin, the Arena Master continued. The challenger Marcus Chen has requested specific environmental conditions, and per arena rules, this request has been granted. Zasari watched as the environmental systems activated and the arena began to shift around them, changing the temperature and atmosphere and gravity to match the conditions of a world she had never visited. The arena will now simulate Earth standard conditions, the announcer declared. 1 gravity, 21% oxygen, and temperature of 22 degrees standard. A wave of fear passed through the spectators as they realized what these conditions meant, and many of them activated personal shields to protect themselves from the Payurivers. Dangerously high oxygen levels that were now filling the arena. Floor Zathari stepped onto the arena floor and felt the gravity settle around her like a comfortable blanket because Earth's gravity was actually lighter than her homeworld. But she noticed something strange. The other species in the stands were struggling just to breathe even behind their shields, while she and Marcus moved easily through the air as if it were nothing unusual at all. "This is what your world feels like," she said to Marcus as they approached each other across the sandy floor. "And it is considered deadly by most galactic standards." Marcus shrugged his shoulders in a gesture she had learned was a Terran expression of casual dismissal and replied, "This is what we call a nice day. And back home we have places much worse than this." They circled each other slowly as the crowd fell silent with anticipation. 2 apex predators from 2 different nightmare worlds, sizing each other up before the violence began. Zathari struck first with a speed that had killed countless enemies before they could even react, her blade slicing through the air toward Marcus's throat in a killing blow that should have ended the fight in a single stroke. But Marcus was not there when her blade arrived. He had moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for a creature so small, ducking under her strike and delivering a powerful punch to her ribs that she actually felt through her armored scales. She spun and attacked again with a combination of strikes that would have overwhelmed any opponent she had ever faced. But Marcus blocked and dodged and countered every move as if he could read her mind. They fought across the arena floor in a deadly dance of claws and fists, blade and body, and the crowd watched in stunned silence as minutes stretched into hours without either warrior gaining a clear advantage. Thari felt something she had not experienced since her youth on Velcar Prime. She felt challenged, pushed to her absolute limits by an opponent who refused to fall no matter how hard she struck. "You are not getting tired," she observed during a brief pause in the combat. "We have been fighting for over 2 hours, and you show no signs of exhaustion." Marcus wiped blood from a cut on his forehead and smiled that predator smile of his before answering. "My ancestors used to chase animals for days across open plains until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Because we are persistent hunters who simply never stop." They clashed again with renewed fury, and Zathari began to understand why the coalition feared Terran so deeply. Because this creature would never give up no matter how badly he was hurt. She managed to land several devastating blows that would have killed most species instantly. But Marcus just kept coming, his body healing from wounds that should have been fatal while he continued fighting without pause. "On my world," she said between exchanges of violence, "we evolved to survive a planet that kills the weak before they can grow strong." "On my world," Marcus replied while blocking her blade with his armored forearm, "we evolved to survive everything the planet threw at us, and then we learned to throw things back." The fight continued as the hours passed and both warriors accumulated injuries that would have ended the careers of lesser beings. But neither would yield to the other finally. Zathari found herself standing face to face with Marcus, both of them breathing hard and covered in each other's blood. And she realized that she had found something she never expected to find. "You are my equal," she admitted with genuine respect in her voice. "And I have never said those words to anyone in my entire life." Marcus nodded and lowered his fighting stance as he replied, "And you are the first alien I have ever met who could keep up with a human for more than 5 minutes. Which makes you something special too." Before they could decide how to end their duel, alarms began screaming throughout the arena, and the crowd erupted into panic as emergency lights flashed red across every surface. "Warning," the station computer announced in a mechanical voice. "Crick swarm. Vessels have breached the outer defensive perimeter and are currently attaching to the station hull in multiple locations." Zathari felt cold terror wash through her twin hearts because she knew the Crick swarm all too well. An ancient enemy of her people who attacked like a plague of insects and consumed everything in their path. "The Cricks are the only enemy my people have never been able to truly defeat," she told Marcus as they watched the chaos spreading through the arena. "And they have destroyed entire worlds with their numbers and their biological weapons." Marcus looked at her with those strange small eyes that somehow held more courage than she had seen in any other being, and asked, "Then I guess we need to stop fighting each other and start fighting them together. What do you say?" Zathari considered his offer for only a moment before extending a clawed hand in the gesture of alliance that her people used when forming battle bonds with worthy warriors. "We fight together," she agreed. "And we show these Cricks what happens when they attack 2 Deathworlders at the same time." Marcus clasped her hand with his much smaller but surprisingly strong grip and smiled with genuine excitement as he said, "I was hoping you would say that, because I've wanted to test myself against the Cricks ever since I heard about them." They turned together toward the arena exit as the sounds of battle erupted throughout the station. 2 predators from 2 nightmare worlds united against a common enemy for the first time in galactic history. Crowd had fled in terror, and the arena was empty now except for them. But neither Zathari nor Marcus felt any fear as they prepared to face an enemy that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. "Try to keep up with me," Zathari challenged as she began running toward the sounds of combat. "Try not to fall behind," Marcus replied as he matched her pace without effort, and together they charged into battle against the Crick swarm. 2 Deathworlders fighting side by side, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The corridors of Meridian Station had transformed into a nightmare of violence and terror as the Cricks swarm poured through breached hull sections like a flood of chitinous decithary, and Marcus moved through the chaos together, fighting back to back as waves of Cricks warriors threw themselves at the 2 Deathworlders with mindless aggression. Cricks were horrifying creatures that resembled giant insects with razor-sharp claws and mouths full of venomous fangs. And they attacked without any care for their own survival, because the swarm valued only the collective. "There are thousands of them," Zathari shouted as she cut down 3 Cricks with a single sweep of her blade. "And more are coming through the hull breaches every minute." Marcus grabbed a fallen Cricks and used its body as a shield before throwing it into a group of attackers and replied, "Then we need to find the source and stop them there instead of fighting them one at a time." They pushed forward through the station toward the command center, where they could access the security systems and find out where the main Cricks force was. Concentrated along the way, they passed dozens of terrified civilians from various species who were hiding in corners and behind barricades, unable to fight back against the swarm that was consuming their station. "Help them," Marcus said to Zathari. "Get them to the evacuation shuttles while I clear a path ahead." She wanted to argue that they should stay together, but she recognized the wisdom in his plan. So she began directing the civilians toward safety, while Marcus charged ahead like a one-man. Armagzathari watched him fight as she guided the frightened aliens to escape pods, and she saw something that amazed her. Even after everything she had witnessed, Marcus did not fight like a Velcaran, who relied on superior strength and regeneration to overwhelm opponents. He fought with creativity and improvisation that turned everything around him into a weapon. He used environmental hazards against the Krix, leading them into electrical panels and explosive containers. And he adapted his tactics constantly based on what each new situation required. Your species is truly terrifying, she muttered to herself with respect as she saw him defeat a dozen Krix using nothing but a broken pipe and his bare hands. They reunited at the command center and accessed the station's internal sensors to find the source of the invasion. And what they saw made even Zathari feel genuine fear. There was a queen mind on board, she said with dread in her voice. The Krix have brought one of their central intelligence organisms into the station's reactor core. Marcus looked at the sensor data showing the massive biological horror that was slowly taking control of the station systems and asked, "What exactly is a queen mind?" Zathari explained with grim knowledge from her people's long war against the swarm. The queen mind is the brain of the Krix collective, a creature that can control millions of drones simultaneously and that produces the biological weapons the swarm uses to destroy worlds. If we do not stop it soon, she continued, it will turn this station into a breeding ground for a new Krix army that could threaten the entire sector. Marcus nodded with that calm determination that she had learned to recognize as his way of facing impossible odds and said, "Then we go to the reactor core and we kill it before that happens." They fought their way down through the station's lower levels, facing increasingly dense swarms of Krix warriors that seemed determined to stop them from reaching the Queen Minzathari's regeneration. Saved her life multiple times as Krix venom burned through her scales and claws tore at her flesh. But she kept fighting because she refused to let these creatures defeat her. Marcus took injuries that would have killed any other species she knew, including deep wounds from venomous fangs and crushing blows from powerful Krix warriors. But he simply kept moving forward as if pain meant nothing to him. "How are you still alive?" she asked him during a brief moment of rest between waves of attackers. "You have enough venom in your system to kill a dozen Velcarans." Marcus spat blood on the floor and answered with a grim smile. "Humans have been poisoning ourselves with alcohol and other toxins for thousands of years. So our bodies learn to process pretty much anything without dying." They reached the reactor core and found the queen mind waiting for them. A massive nightmare of biological tissue that had merged with the station's reactor systems and was pulsing with terrible life. The creature was larger than anything Zathari had ever fought. A mountain of flesh and chitin with hundreds of tentacles, and dozens of eyes that all focused on the two Deathworlders with cold alien intelligence. "You cannot stop the swarm," the queen mind spoke directly into their minds with a voice that felt like insects crawling through their thoughts. "We have consumed 10,000 worlds, and we will consume 10,000 more." Zathari felt her courage wavering in the face of this ancient horror, but Marcus stepped forward without hesitation and said, "My people have a saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall." He charged at the queen mind, while Zathari circled around to find a weakness in its massive body. And together, they began the most desperate battle of their lives. The queen mind struck at them with tentacles that could crush starship hull plating and sprayed them with acid that dissolved armor and flesh. But neither Deathworlder retreated. Marcus fought like a demon, climbing the creature's body and striking at its eyes while dodging lethal attacks that came from every direction. creating chaos and confusion that kept the queen mind focused on him. Zathari saw her opportunity when the creature's attention was fully on Marcus, and she drove her volcanic blade deep into what she hoped was the queen mind's central nervous cluster. Creatures screamed in their minds with pain and rage, and in its death throes, it lashed out with every weapon it possessed. A massive tentacle struck Marcus with devastating force and sent him flying across the reactor chamber to crash against the far wall with a sound of breaking bones that made Zathari's heart stop. "No!" she screamed as she watched his body fall to the floor in a broken heap. But she forced herself to finish the kill before rushing to his side. The queen mind died with a psychic scream that echoed through the entire station, and all of the Krik's warriors collapsed as their controlling intelligence was severed from their minds. A theory ran to Marcus and found him lying in a pool of his own blood with injuries so severe that she could not understand how he was still breathing. "You fool," she said as she gathered his broken body in her arms. "Why did you sacrifice yourself like that?" Marcus coughed blood and somehow managed to smile as he whispered, "Because that is what humans do for the people we care about. And because I knew you could finish it if I gave you the chance." She carried him through the silent corridors of the station to the medical bay, passing hundreds of dead Kriks and the grateful looks of survivors who understood that these two warriors had saved all of their lives. The station doctors were horrified by the extent of Marcus's injuries and told her that no species could survive such trauma. But she refused to leave his side as they worked to save him. Hours passed, and then days, as Marcus lay in a healing tank with machines fighting to repair damage that should have been fatal 10 times over. And Zathari sat beside him the entire time. She had never waited for anyone in her life, because she was a conqueror who moved from victory to victory without looking back. But now she found herself unable to leave this strange small creature who had fought beside her as an equal on the third day. Marcus opened his eyes and looked at her through the healing fluid with that same calm expression he always wore. And he actually had the nerve to smile. "Did we win?" he asked in a voice weak from Reykjavik's Athery. Felt tears forming in her 4 eyes for the first time since childhood and answered, "Yes, you impossible creature. We won because you almost died to give me the chance to kill that monster." Marcus tried to shrug and winced from the pain, before saying, "That is just how my people are. We form bonds with others, and then we do anything to protect them, even if it costs us everything." She realized in that moment that she had found something more valuable than all her conquered worlds. Something she had never expected to find in her life of violence and power. She had found a true equal, a warrior from another nightmare world who understood what it meant to survive and fight and never give up, no matter how impossible the odds. "When you recover," she told him with fierce determination, "I want you to tell me everything about your people and your world, because I think there is much we can learn from each other." Marcus smiled and closed his eyes to rest as he replied, "I think you might be right about that, Princess Queen. I think you might be right." And in that medical bay on a station surrounded by the dead bodies of their enemies, 2 Deathworlders began to build something that had never existed before in the history of the galaxy. A true alliance between the survivors of 2 nightmare worlds. News of the battle at Meridian Station spread across the galaxy like a shockwave, and the story of 2 Deathworlders fighting together against the Krik swarm sent tremors of fear through every species in the coalition. Marcus had recovered from his wounds faster than the station doctors believed possible. His human biology healing damage that should have required months of treatment in only 2 weeks. Athari had stayed with him the entire time, learning more about his species and sharing the history of her own people in conversations that stretched through the long hours of recovery. "The coalition is afraid of us," Marcus said one evening as they watched the stars through the medical bay window. I have been receiving reports from other Star Wanderers that the High Council is meeting an emergency session. Zathari had expected this reaction because she knew how the Coalition thought about Deathworld species. But hearing it confirmed still made her feel cold anger in her twin hearts. They fear what they cannot control, she replied. And they have always seen my people as useful weapons to be pointed at their enemies rather than equal members of galactic civilization. Communication alert interrupted their conversation, and Marcus accessed the message with growing concern on his face as he read its contents. The Coalition has declared both the Velcaran Empire and Earth as existential threats to galactic peace, he said with tension in his voice. And they are assembling a massive strike fleet to deal with both of our species permanently. Zathari felt her warrior instincts awakening at this news, but also something new. Something that felt like concern for more than just her own people. How long do we have before they attack? She asked. Marcus checked the intelligence data and answered. Their fleet will reach Velcar Prime in 30 standard cycles. And after they destroy your homeworld, they plan to permanently enforce Earth's quarantine by turning the planet into a lifeless rock. The two Deathworlders looked at each other as the weight of this threat settled on their shoulders, knowing that everything they cared about was now in danger of complete destruction. I must return to warn my people, Zathari said with urgency. But even the full might of the Velcaran Empire cannot stand against the combined fleets of the entire Coalition. Marcus stood from his recovery bed and walked to her side, before saying, Then we need to do something that has never been done before in the history of the galaxy. She looked at him with curiosity and asked, What do you suggest? Take me to Earth, Marcus said, with determination burning in his small but fierce eyes. Let me bring you to my homeworld and show the Coalition what happens when they threaten two Deathworld species at the same time. Zathari had never expected to visit the legendary Class 12 Deathworld that had produced this remarkable creature. But she understood the wisdom in his plan if the Velcarans and the Terrans could unite their forces. They might stand a chance against the Coalition fleet. And at the very least they could show the galaxy that Deathworlders would not be exterminated without a fight. They left Meridian Station together on Marcus's ship. A small but fast vessel designed for a single pilot that somehow felt comfortable despite her larger Velcaran framed the journey to Earth's quarantine zone took many cycles, and during that time, they passed through systems filled with peaceful garden worlds where species lived without any understanding of true struggle. These worlds are beautiful, Zathari admitted as she watched a paradise planet drift past the viewport. But I do not understand how any species could evolve intelligence without facing constant threats to their survival. Marcus nodded and explained. Most species in the galaxy developed on worlds where food was plentiful and predators were rare. So they never needed to become as aggressive or adaptable as humans and Velcarans. That is why they fear us, she realized. Because we remind them of how fragile their existence really is. They reached the edge of Earth's quarantine zone and encountered a wall of defensive satellites and automated weapons platforms that immediately locked onto their vessel, unidentified craft. You have entered restricted space, a mechanical voice announced. Identify yourself or you will be destroyed. Marcus transmitted his credentials and spoke into the communication system. This is Star Wanderer Marcus Chun, requesting emergency access to Earth with priority message for the United Terran Assembly. A long silence followed before a human voice responded. Marcus, this is Earth Defense Command. We confirm your identity, but you are traveling with an alien life form which is strictly prohibited. Zathari felt a moment of fear that they had come all this way only to be turned away at the door. But Marcus spoke with passionate conviction. The Galaxy Coalition is coming to destroy Earth in 28 cycles, he said urgently. And this Velcaran princess may be our only chance at survival. So I need you to trust me." Another long silence passed before the human voice replied, "Proceed to landing zone 7 and Marcus. I hope you know what you are doing because this is going to cause a lot of problems." Their ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, and Zathari saw the legendary Deathworld for the first time with her own 4 eyes. The planet was beautiful in a wild and dangerous way, covered with blue oceans and green forests and brown deserts that all seemed to pulse with barely contained violence. "This is your homeworld," she said with wonder. "It looks almost peaceful from up here." Marcus laughed and replied, "The peace is an illusion because everything down there is constantly trying to eat, poison, or outlast everything else. And humans are just the species that won the competition. They landed in a massive city built near an enormous lake. And Zathari was immediately surrounded by human security forces who pointed weapons at her with obvious fear and hostility. Marcus stepped between her and the guards and raised his hands in a calming gesture before saying, "She saved my life and helped me defeat a Krix queen mind. So you will treat her with the respect she deserves." The guards lowered their weapons hesitantly and escorted them both to a massive building that Marcus called the United Terran Assembly, where the leaders of human civilization were waiting to hear what they had to say. Zathari found herself standing before hundreds of human representatives from nations and territories all across Earth, and she felt something she had rarely experienced in her life: nervousness. "I am Princess Queen Zathari of the Velkaran Empire," she announced to the assembly, "and I have come to propose an alliance between our 2 species against the coalition that seeks to destroy us both." The assembly erupted in heated debate as some humans argued for the alliance, while others demanded that she be imprisoned or killed for entering their quarantine zone. But Marcus stepped forward and spoke with a voice that carried across the chamber like thunder. "I have fought beside this Velkaran warrior," he declared, "and I have seen that her people are not so different from our own. Survivors of a cruel world who learn to fight for everything they have." He continued speaking with passion that silenced the arguments around him. "The coalition has always feared humanity because they know what we are capable of when we unite against a common enemy. And now they want to destroy us before we can ever become the threat they imagine." Zathari stepped forward to stand beside him and added her own voice to his argument. "My people believed we were the ultimate warriors of the galaxy, until I met this human and learned that Earth produced something even more formidable than Velkar Prime. But we do not have to be enemies." She looked around at the human faces, watching her with mixtures of fear and curiosity and hope. And she spoke from her twin hearts. "Together, our species could show the coalition that Deathworlders are not monsters to be feared and destroyed, that we are survivors who will stand together against any threat." The assembly voted through the night and finally reached a decision as the sun rose over the human city. They would accept the alliance and combine human ingenuity with Velkaran strength to face the coalition fleet that was coming to destroy them. Boss Zathari and Marcus stood together on a balcony overlooking the city as ships from both species began arriving in orbit, forming a combined fleet that represented the first true alliance between 2 Deathworld civilizations. "We might still lose," Marcus admitted as he watched the ships gathering above them. Zathari nodded and replied, "Perhaps, but we will show the galaxy what happens when they make Deathworlders desperate. And they will never forget the lesson we teach them." A transmission arrived from the approaching coalition fleet demanding unconditional surrender, and Marcus composed a response that would echo through galactic history. "We are not your enemies," the message read, "but we will not be your victims. So come and face us if you dare, and learn what happens when 2 nightmare worlds stand together." The galaxy watched as 2 species from 2 different hell worlds stood side by side against 1,000 enemies. and the universe would never be the same again, because the Princess Queen had thought she was the sole Deathworlder in the galaxy. Until she encountered a human, and together they would change everything.